6'2" Artemis Langford, who, according to a district court judge who has dismissed this case, it is Westonbrook v. Kappa Kappa Gamma fraternity. Some of the details in this court opinion from this judge and some of the details of what the women faced are eyebrow-raising, to say the least. Clay, why don't you bring our people, our folks here, up to speed on the life and times of Artemis Langford and the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority?
So Judge Alan Johnson is the one who dismissed this case. And he says, again, that the bylaw of the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority doesn't define what a woman is. And when the women tried to point out things that to them merited someone not being a woman, the judge said, for instance, he thinks whether someone has an erection or not does not define if they are male or female. Now, I would submit, Buck, that whether one has an erection or not is actually a very strongly dispositive evidence as to biologically whether or not you are a male or female. I would actually think that that is quite important. And by the way, I guarantee you the reason they didn't define female in the Kappa Kappa Gamma bylaws is because they never thought that there would be someone who was a man pretend to be a woman, and everybody in the courts wouldn't say, okay, clearly the intent of having a sorority is to exclude men, as, by the way, the intent of having a fraternity, by their very definition, is to exclude women. But yes, he said whether you can get erection or not does not have any impact. The complaint
can we also... Oh, go ahead. Are you going to add the detail about how...
Yeah.
How the erection came up. Sorry, but go ahead.
Because he would watch the women undress in the sorority house. And then he would also question them. And this is creepy and weird. Like, even if you were heterosexual, the complaint says that this dude pretending to be a chick, quote, repeatedly questioned the women about what vaginas look like, breast cup size, whether women were considering breast reductions and birth control. Like, other than birth control, I could see if you're in a serious relationship, you can ask somebody about birth control. This other stuff is like really creepy, even if you were heterosexual, right? Asking women in the sorority what their vaginas look like. I mean, this is, and again, getting erections while you're doing so. And then the court saying, well, we don't know if this is a dude or a chick, and therefore he can be a member. This is like crazy talk.
I also say, on the one hand, yes, I think it's important that the farcical nature of this, which we are certainly addressing, is something that must be discussed. But also, back to my initial point about how the activist left on this issue. And, I would get I'm sure you've gotten this too on Twitter or something. Say, why can't you just be nice to the people that want it? So hold on a second. No one's saying be mean to anybody here.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, if you have a women's ice hockey team, a 200-pound guy shouldn't be able to, skate around and smoke them all into the sideboards because, gender identity. No, I'm sorry. There are limits. And this also goes to, this isn't about can people dress the way they want. This isn't about be polite to people you see on the street or that you work with. This is about whether women should be forced to undress naked in front of a male who is clearly sexually aroused by this process. Where is the decency that we should be able to ask for the young women here? What about if this was, your daughter? What about if this was, if I have a little sister, she was in college. I remember if I was told that my little sister, who's a fierce attorney, so she would probably bring these lawsuits herself. But if I was told that she had to be, subjected to this, as a guy, I'd be pissed off. I'd have a real problem with it.
Well, just think about this, Buck. If this same guy was exposing himself in the parking lot outside of the sorority, he would be arrested and he would be prosecuted probably to the full extent of the law. And every single person out there listening to us right now would say, yeah, if this guy is in the parking lot or he's on the front yard of the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority at the University of Wyoming and he's exposing himself and he's engaging in some sort of sexual behavior that makes the girls uncomfortable, as they enter or exit their house, he would be charged with a crime. How much worse is it that he's permitted to do it inside of the house and he gets to live there? This is absolute insanity that this could be allowed to happen. And the problem is now with this crazy judge's opinion. I mean, I would love to hear from this judge. Does he have daughters? Does he have any conception of reality? How in the world does the judge say a man getting an erection inside of a sorority house isn't evidence that he's not a woman? Again, just take it outside of the sorority house. This is what lawyers have to do. You have to think hypothetically. What would happen if a man exposed himself to sorority members in the parking lot of their sorority house or on the front yard of their sorority house? In other words, outside of the home, outside of where they live. He would be charged with a crime. And yet, if all of you out there listening to me right now had to make a choice, if you said, okay, would you rather have someone expose themselves to your daughter outside in a parking lot or inside of a home in which she was forced to share with him? I think most of you would say, hey, I don't want this to happen, but outside feels like less of a threat than it occurring indoors in a place where she lives. The court is allowing the indoors. They would never allow the outdoors.
I also think it's, if you take a step back, you can see how when it was convenient for the accumulation of power, the left used feminism as a cudgel, as a weapon in a whole range of, whether it's changing family structure or, society. That's a huge conversation. But the left used women for its purposes, or I should say used feminism, the ideology of this advancement of women that was inherently somewhat hostile to men, which is really what the modern feminist movement is. Now they've thrown women under the bus.
Yeah.
Now women, sorry, you're not useful anymore politically the way you used to be. So now we don't even know what you are. That is what the left says. Sorry, women don't even know what a woman is, to borrow from the Matt Walsh movie. And that's where we stand now.
And not only that, Buck, they're taking advantage of women's own, to your point, willingness to be accepting and not try to judge. There are no, I think it's important to hammer this home. There are no famous women pretending to be men. There's no woman who defines as a man that's getting named Man of the Year. When they tried to appeal to men with transgender stuff with the crazy Bud Light ad, men were like, screw this, we'll just drink another beer. At some point, and this is important, I think it needs to be hammered home, women are being taken advantage of, and also this builds on what you're saying, Buck, but I think it synthesizes it really well. At some point, inclusion becomes exclusion. So it's one thing to say, hey, if you want to identify as a chick and you're a dude, go for it, or vice versa, or whatever else in your own private life. But as soon as you require me to acknowledge the untruth that you are a woman, and I think you're right, Buck. I think where all this is headed, people think it's crazy, but I think you nailed it. We are not far from you are going to be a transphobe if you don't want to sleep with a man who is identifying as a woman. They're real women too.
I guarantee in 5 years, Clay, we'll be doing this show and we'll be sitting around saying, you guys see this with the left? They're really pushing this thing about how trans women are women, so you should be attracted to trans women as a heterosexual guy.
Correct.
That is the inversion of reality they will take us toward. It's also why they want to say this is an innate characteristic. It's also why they're going after the children with this. It's also why they are so fixated on making sure that there are these physiological changes that come along with it. And as I said, why do you even need that? If gender is a state of mind, why do you have to have, a lot of these trans figures, they have giant fake breasts and they do all these things to their lips and they don't look like women. They often look like parodies of women. Why?
Correct. Somebody yesterday, Buck, sent me a message and I thought it was so good on Twitter. I should read it here as we get ready to go to break. But the idea was, for a long time, women argued, hey, you don't have to be defined by wearing a dress. You don't have to be defined by putting on makeup. You don't even have to shave your legs, right? And now, what do the men who decide that they identify as women do? They become the most exaggerated versions. Here, this is from Jeff, MNC. 1900s women everywhere. Women are more than long hair, makeup, and a dress. 2023 men everywhere. All it takes to be a woman is having long hair, wearing makeup, and putting on a dress. These guys are adopting the most exaggerated and oftentimes offensive levels of femininity. And Buck, they're often doing it and behaving in a way like 10 or 11-year-old girls do while being fully grown. Like this Bud Light, this Dylan Mulvaney joke, not acting like an actual woman, acting like an 11-year-old girl.